The Internet is fast becoming an integral part of our daily lives, but many of us are probably unaware that the biggest change to the Internet since its inception is underway. It is a change from the current underlying Internet infrastructure called IPv4, invented in 1980, to the new architectural development called Internet Protocol version 6 or IPv6. Internet Protocol, or IP by itself, is something like the postal system. It forms the basic communication language of the Internet by allowing packets of data to reach an intended destination using a structure of number addresses. IPv4 was designed to allocate 4.3 billion termination points on the Internet. At the time of its inception, this was seen as being more than adequate. However, its inventors never anticipated the phenomenal growth of the Internet today. With more than 1 billion smartphones alone, the IPv4 address space is now exhausted. The adoption of IPv6 will allow 3.4 times 10 to the power 38 addresses, the equivalent of 340 trillion addresses. But are our everyday devices compatible? Do we need to switch now? Are our Internet service providers ready? To help address these issues and more, the Telecommunications Authority of Trinidad and Tobago held the Open Forum seminar entitled IPv6, Do We Have a Choice? This forum brought together regional engineers, key stakeholders and members of the general public to better understand the switch to IPv6. Mr. Selby Wilson, Chairman of the Telecommunications Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, made the opening remarks.
Broadband has become an essential prerequisite for social and economic development throughout the world, connecting the unconnected and empowering the disenfranchised. As a regulator, we work to ensure Trinidad and Tobago remains connected internally and externally to the rest of the world so that our citizens can benefit from the exceptional promises of the new digital world. Tardy migration from IPv4 to IPv6 has the potential to disconnect us. This forum is another of our multi-stakeholder approaches to improving the industry, since only together we can create a shared vision and take effective action towards our participation in the global information age. I want to take this opportunity to advise local consumers of the necessity to purchase IPv6 compatible equipment when they are upgrading their routers, as well as switching on IPv6 option on their personal computer operating software.
As IPv4 addresses deplete, expert consultants specializing in IPv6 deployment continue to emphasize the urgency to act now. Locally, if our Internet service providers fail to commit, consumers could face impaired or degraded online services.
As you may know, IPv4 addresses will run out soon, very soon, probably in 3 months or less, although we don't know the exact date. This visit that we are doing to Trinidad is a part of a set of visits that we are going around the region. We are trying to give to the most important communities, to the most important countries, the same message in order to be aware about this situation. Because IPv6 is the best way of resolving the scarcity of IP addresses and making possible the deployment of new services which benefit the whole of society. Indeed, I must emphasize here how critical this is to the entire future of the Internet.
LACNIC, the Latin America and Caribbean Network Information Center, is a non-profit organization that provides number resource allocation. Carlos Martinez, Chief Technology Officer at LACNIC, shares the results of the organization's own internal experiments and gives some insight as to how the problem started.
Like for 15 years or more than that, probably close to 20 years, IP addresses were just assigned by a group of people working in an office in the University of Southern California. When I started working in the internet in Uruguay, you still had to request addresses by making a phone call to a number in the Los Angeles area, where someone picked the phone and basically asked you one question is, how many addresses do you want? Okay, those were the days. Yeah, I say, I'm calling you from Uruguay, from this company, such and such. I need this much. Okay. These are your addresses. Write them down. That was it. Yeah, and now we're kind of suffering the consequences of some parts of that. I mean, the whole thing was run like an experiment, you know, like a university project. The internet that we know today is an experiment that ran out of control. And I think that's a very powerful image of many of the things that have happened over the years. Actually, no one thought that it would reach the scale that it has today. The current explosion of devices we all carry, we have smartphones, we have tablets, we have laptop computers. There's even a talk about having a smartwatch or something like that. We run several experiments during the Lightning meetings. One of the experiments that we run is how many IPv4 addresses does each attendee use. We've been measuring this for a long time. At the beginning, it was less than one per person, which meant that there were some people attending the conference that didn't have any devices with them. Currently, we are around 2.1, 2.2 addresses per attendee. It means that on the mean, people have more than 2 devices, and it keeps going up. Right? This adds to what many addresses we need. I mean, the whole thing is exploding already. If you bring now in the picture things like 4G, mobile telephony, long-term evolution, and the whole Internet of Things, I mean, the IPv4 space is definitely not enough. Definitely not enough.
When will our internet service providers offer IPv6 addresses? Will our IPv4 networks be automatically translated in the interim? These were among the concerns raised by attendees.
If the ISP decides to change to IPv6, most of the devices bought or sold in the past 4 or 5 years are already IP6 enabled. So they will, for more or less just work, right? They change the scope to IP6, they change the end device, the router, the modem, or they just enable it on the router or modem, right? So is it that the industry is making a big deal over something that the consumers have no say, or is it just that this conversation should be had between the regulators and the internet service providers and content providers?
On one hand, yes, definitely the consumer shouldn't have to worry about this. On the other hand, the consumer has a role to play in what they ask from the ISPs, okay? So one of the most commonly heard excuses about not doing IPv6 is that there is no customer demand, which in my opinion, it's a silly thing to say, because when did you ask for IPv4? Okay, you buy internet access. You never asked for IPv4. Actually, my mother doesn't care. She doesn't know. She just wants to check Facebook and send emails. For a long time, there was some sort of stalemate, because it was true that if some ISPs were to deploy IPv6, there would be almost no use for it. But that's a situation that has changed. 2 years ago, it changed a lot. And now, as I mentioned, you can get over 40% of your network's traffic over IPv6 if you enable IPv6 for your customers.
In the Switzerland example, they have come up with a sort of multi-party approach, an IPv6 council, to try and encourage discussion and encourage the actual rollout of IPv6. Is that something that is almost always necessary or feasible?
Actually, I think that may work. I'm not sure if in every country in our region would work, but in some of them, perhaps it would work. Within our region, I actually have witnessed a couple of very nice examples of industry collaboration efforts. One was a huge project in Brazil, for example, for controlling spam, basically filtering out port 25, you know, what is called usually port 25 management. It's a kind of controversial technique to control spam, but it's extremely effective. But the thing is, if you don't get every ISP in agreement, no one will do it. Because if just one of them does it, it would immediately put the one that's doing it in a position of disadvantage, competitive disadvantage compared to the others. So for that to work, it needs industry agreement. And they pull it out in Brazil. They pull it off in Brazil. They made it work. It took them like 5 years. They started discussing it like 5 years ago, and they finally got it running the end of 2012. But it's a nice example that cross-industry or industry collaboration can work.
I came to this forum last year too, and I did not really hear from the ISPs themselves. I've never really heard a response from the ISPs, either official or unofficial, on when the clients or the users can really have or set some expectations on when IPv6 can be made available to them. So my question is the authority looking into this? What is the ability to influence the ISPs to adopt IPv6? And can we look forward to hearing from the authority on progress being made on the adoption of IPv6 with the ISPs?
Just to respond possibly in a, not a direct way, but to put some information on the table. I think many of you might know that the authority has been working or has worked with our line ministry in the preparation of what is called a National ICT Plan. Within that plan, there are a series of activities. There are several themes that have been identified in order to, if you like, fast forward or bring the country as a whole into line with what's happening in the wider sphere. In that context, the authority has taken ownership of Theme 4, which speaks to the development of an ICT, if you like, infrastructure for the provision of services. And within that theme, several projects have been identified. The whole migration to IPv6 is one of those projects that has been identified. So from a national perspective, it is recognized as something that is imperative and must be done. Having said that, we have been playing a largely facilitative role, if you like, in trying to sensitize the ISPs, trying to get the information out there to ISPs, to the public at large, as to what IPv6 means and the need and the necessity to migrate to IPv6. In the same vein, just to add, within that context, many of you would recognize that the establishment of an IXP in Trinidad and Tobago, again, was something that the authority has facilitated. We're close to having that implementation in place. That is being done by the ISPs in a company formed by the ISPs through a facilitative role by the authority, and it's very close to completion. So within that context, a lot of work is being done in that space. Thank you.
Ronald Mohammed from TSTT. Thank you. So I guess the ISP that we're referring, that all of us have been referring to, is the STT. IPv6, we have been doing some work on IPv6 for a while now. What you said is very accurate. We were at a point where there was no content, there were no devices. It's very costly to actually implement IPv6 at one point in time. I think we have passed that hurdle now. Where we are going to is we are committed to IPv6, and within the coming year, we are focusing on deploying and getting IPv6 within our network to service all our customers. So rest assured that we are on board, and we will be coming there at accelerated speed.
I was really surprised when we had more uptake from the ads than we had from the letters we sent out. It says that certainly people have an interest. They know that it's important to how we go forward as a country and the kinds of improvements that we can look forward to if we can implement IPv6.